First of all, if you'll take your bulletins, December the 20th, which is Wednesday, is going to be our candlelight service. It's going to be at 6:30 here at the church. It's going to be a full service, folks. Just like we normally have a Sunday morning service, it's going to be a full service. We're going to have some music, we're going to have some specials, we're going to have an interesting program. So you might want to be here. Sunday, next week, notice, no Sunday school, but we are going to have our Christmas program at 10:45. It's Christmas Eve, and so there won't be services that evening, because a lot of families do Christmas on Christmas Eve. So we decided to do that, and then the Wednesday, the 27th, there'll be no services here at the church. That's Christmas week. A lot of people are usually gone and busy and things like that. The kids don't have a program going on, the youth don't have a program going on. So we will rest up that Christmas week. I think that's when y'all got an all week long at home, isn't it? Yeah, you're going to need 2 weeks. Huh? So this is going to be interesting. I think y'all got it through what, the 2nd of January, something like that? 5th. 5th? Yes. Wow. I will pray for you, young adults. I remember those times. Don't forget that we have our baskets out there for the sweats. I think it's the sweatpants and also the sweatshirts and things that we need for the school. We also have the socks that they need for the nursing home. Then the food boxes out there. We're going to be giving out our food boxes on the 21st, and they did tell me you don't need any more canned vegetables. So look on the list and tell me there are several things that they do need, especially the potatoes, cranberry sauce, things like that, stovetop stuffing. Those things are needed. We've already gotten the turkeys, so all of that's ready. Okay, but if you want to donate something between now and the 21st, that's going to be Tuesday, get it there early. Okay? Yeah, what? Got plenty of cake mixes, she said. Okay? So make sure that if you got to bring something, bring it here by tomorrow or Tuesday morning early before they pass them out. All right. Any other announcements? I think you've had several poinsettias given. Yes, Judy.
The poinsettias, the latest ones I have announced were from John, Deborah, and Heather Woody in memory of Aaron Woody, which is Heather's mother, and then Faith Owens gave 3 today in remembrance of Brother Truman and Erla Owens and her grandma Jill.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, next Sunday morning, we're doing a Christmas thing. I like this one. It's cool. Okay, Sunday morning, we're doing our Christmas thing. All right, so come prepared to experience a wide range of emotions. Okay, we should look like we're going to cry, but we're going to laugh a little. Okay, and we're going to sing a little and stuff like that. Okay, so just be ready. All right, next Sunday morning, we're not having Sunday school.
That's right.
Not having Sunday school. We're having church at 10:45, which means we'll start about 10:50. Okay. 10:57 now. We haven't started yet. All right. And the candlelight is good. Candlelight. Yes, I was about to have listening back there.
Wednesday night.
Candlelight. We're going to be doing some singing in the candlelight too. Okay. I won't be one of these.
Practice. Practice tonight at 5 o'clock for those who are going to be involved in that. You ever heard of that phrase, tugging at your ear? You know, it's good to have fun in church, isn't it? Amen. Amen. All right. Any other announcement? Brother Ted.
Saturday for the kids from 11 to 2. This Saturday before, it's the 23rd, is that right?
Yes.
We'll have an activity of bounce houses and stuff. So the kids are bouncing off the wall at home, including teens. You can send them from 11 to 2 here, and we'll have it out here in the fellowship hall.
Okay. All right. All right. Have we got our video ready? All right. Go ahead and show us our video then for our Mighty Moon Christmas song.
As a team, And as a community of believers, God has given us a mission. God compels us together to reach a massive city.
Mexico City is a free-for-all.
A lot of traffic.
Terrible traffic.
There are things that can happen. They're not the worst things in the world.
Everybody's in a hurry.
Getting anywhere takes forever.
Millions and millions of people coming in from Europe, South America.
Cultural influences from all over the world that you find here in business and art and music.
From Germany, from the Middle East, from Africa, from China.
From unreached people groups around the world.
They're not an isolated country full of mariachis.
Where are the unreached places? Who are the unreached people?
It's hard to know kind of where to begin.
There's so many pockets of different areas, of different groups. Jewish, Mexicans, Germans.
A Lebanese community.
So this city has a reach worldwide, and we want to follow those lines to take the gospel all over the world.
The Lord has put together a team of incredible people
Who are humble and are submissive to one another.
When I look at our team, we are a small representation of what Mexico is.
Cuban American, a girl from Memphis.
Koreans.
I was born in Cuba. Lily was born in Colombia.
Todd Beal, I think he's like a descendant of a Cherokee chief or something like that.
Different experiences, different backgrounds.
The dynamic of working together as a team is there's so much that we can offer together.
Trabajar unidos con diferentes dones con un mismo propósito, Jesucristo.
Mega City presents a lot of challenges.
Their fellowship time is not with their next door neighbor. Their fellowship are the connections they have through their works. How do you minister in a world like that?
Most ministry happens at night because that's when people are home. So you have to be willing to be at someone's house till midnight, whatever it takes. That burden of lostness, I think it weighs heavy on all of us on the team.
Because we're only a team of 12 people and there's 28 million people, we can't reach them by ourselves.
We're seeking to leverage, to mobilize, to be catalytic in the way that we're working.
Invitan para conferencias, el internet, el Skype. Tengo grupos de Cali, Colombia, tengo grupos de Italia, tengo grupos en todo lugar.
Mentoring with guys who are studying here at this campus, especially guys who are interested in pastoring or missions or sensing some kind of a calling. We're trying to team together with our national partners here,
Working with the seminaries.
the local churches, as well as folks who are coming down from our Baptist churches in the States,
Limitless partners from the United States.
to be able to get the gospel in their homes and in their hearts.
We cannot do it alone.
God's still calling people. He hasn't stopped. Not just to be pastors, not just to be teachers, not just to be local missionaries, but to reach all the nations.
Hope, that's correct. I'm going to light the hope candle. Now, what was the second one? Joy. All right, here's the one for joy. Now, what was the third one? How about peace? Yeah. Peace, all right. And then Marley is going to light a special one today. This candle stands for salvation. Remember that Jesus came to bring us salvation. Here we go. Thank you, Marley. All right. Salvation was brought to us because Jesus Christ was born and later gave his life that you and I might have salvation, that saved us from our sins and gives us an opportunity to be with God forever. So we have hope, joy, peace, salvation. Anybody know what the middle candle might stand for? That's right, it's the Christ candle. That's the one we'll light next week here in our special services. Okay? All right. We're ready.
All right. Joy to the world is what we're going to start with this morning. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare to give room. And heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing, and heaven and nature sing. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of Good to see you at Crow Mountain Baptist Church this morning. What a mighty God we serve. What mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him, heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. What mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him, heaven and earth adore him. What mighty God we serve. We're going to continue this morning with I Love to Tell the Story. We found a way to tie this into Christmas. Story of Jesus' birth, amen? Any time of year, I love to tell the story. I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and his glory, of Jesus and his love. I love to tell the story because I know it is true.
Well, it's almost over. One more Sunday. And starting January 1st, I'm going to tell you again, Christmas is coming. You better get ready. My wife and I got to talking about the fact that it's here and things are moving so fast. Well, I think a lot of it is that we anticipate what's happening. And we look to event all through the year. Right now, I was looking at the calendar and I looked at all the events we've got planned for this next year. And folks, it's a full year. And as we move from one to the other, we'll proceed down toward Christmas again in 2018. But as it's almost here, we want to make sure that the true story gets out. So today I want you to turn to Luke, the 2nd chapter. Luke, the 2nd chapter. We're going to talk about the journey. Luke, the 2nd chapter. Starting in verse 1 through 7. If you would stand, if you would, in the honor of the reading of God's word. And it came to pass in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This census first took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. So all went to be registered, everyone to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and of the lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed wife, who was with child. So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you that the gospel writers put this event to give us clarity about the coming of our Savior. We ask as we look at it today that you might help us to better understand the difficulties that were involved in it and all of the world events that were going on at the time. Let that word go forth, Lord. Let it encourage our lives to realize that even in days that we live in, which sometimes seem stressful and scary, that God can still work. Go with us now. In the name of Jesus do we pray. Amen. You may be seated. Several things about this passage. It's short, to the point. Basically, Luke didn't leave a whole lot out. There are a lot of things that he said that sometimes we don't get. First of all, how many of us know the story of history at that time? What was going on in the world? The Bible doesn't give us all of the events that are taking place, but I'm going to fill you in with some that I think are very interesting. First off, this fellow called Caesar Augustus. Who was he? Well, his real name was Caius Octavius. He was the grand step-nephew of Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was the one who was assassinated, so that moved Gaius up about a ring in the throne line, you might say. Mark Antony was to actually take the next throne, and would have, because the army would have placed him there because he was a great general at that time. But Mark Antony committed suicide. And now we don't know if that was over Cleopatra or what, we just know that he committed suicide. But that moved up Gaius one more time. Caius came up to the place of inheriting the throne. Now Caius Octavius was one of those first ones who was declared to be a god. So it's interesting that the one that is now in control of the whole known world at this time could call for a census. He wanted the people numbered for the purpose of taxation. That meant everything that was under his realm. Think about that today. If we had one ruler over all the world that had that kind of power, what would it be like? What would be the situation? Back then, this was the one who controlled, by the power of Rome, controlled the entire known world of that day, and had power to command every person to do something. And this was for them to go to their city of birth and and be registered. Now, you know, it's kind of a biblical thing. David got in trouble for counting the people, if you remember in the scriptures. They were told not to, because they were God's people. God knew who they were. God knew where they were. God knew what their numbers were. You know, he didn't have to worry about that. And then, so he told the other kings, you don't number my people. But this one wanted the numbering. Now, when a command goes out like that, it's going to have some kind of ramification upon the whole world. There were all kinds of difficulties going on at that time. There were already those that were planning to make a siege against Rome. There was world turmoil going on. There was rebellion going on. Some of y'all may have gone and seen the Star Wars epic here that just started, I think, only said they this last week. And that was all based upon a rebellion that's going on in the overall universe. But there was rebellion that was going on at that time in history. The Germans, Germanus, was rebelling. Those in Gaul were rebelling. Those in Britain were rebelling. The world of the Roman Empire was about to be challenged by all kinds of forces. So there was a lot of issues taking place, a lot of turmoil going on in that very time that Jesus was to be born. You see, the world is always going to be in turmoil. There's always going to be some war, rumor of war going on. Jesus told that over in Matthew 24. He said, in the end times, there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, and it's going to be a continuous thing. So don't worry about it, because those are only the beginnings of the pains, the later pains of the coming of Christ. Well, the same thing is happening in the world then. This one commanded it. Now, what about this fellow called Quirinius? I always wondered about him. Quirinius really was a humble man. He was a soldier of fortune, and he had actually gained positions of power because of his Sicilian victories that he had won as a Roman tribune. So he was promoted into a place of power over this particular area, which was Judah, Israel, and most of that Middle East area. It's interesting that this little spot of land, this little portion of the world, is what God calls the center. In the Old Testament, he calls this the center of the world. And from that center, we have seen many events take place. Not only the birth of Jesus, but folks, I want you to know, it was a contention all through the Old Testament history. If I go back and tell you all the battles that were fought over that little piece of land, you'd be amazed. How the Egyptians came up, and then the Syrians came down, and then Babylon came over, and literally that place was always having an issue of captivity. Somebody was in control of it, but never the Israelite people. Now that's going to change. In the future, that's going to change. Well, you see, when Jesus comes back to reign upon the earth, and he will reign upon the earth for 1,000 years.
Yes, he will.
And while he is reigning, his throne is going to be in Jerusalem. So it should not be unusual to us that Jerusalem has been declared the capital of Israel. It always has been the capital of Israel. Since the time of David the king, Jerusalem has been the capital of Israel. He made it so. It became the religious center. It became the political center. It became the economic center. It was the center of the kingdom. It was the center of Israel, and God says it's the center of the world.
Yes.
About 6 miles outside of the center of the world is a place called Bethlehem. Quirinius, the governor of that region, gave out the edict that all should come and be registered according to the Roman law. When they did, that made Mary and Joseph have to travel. The journey from Nazareth to Jerusalem is about 3 days. Now, that doesn't sound so bad, but Mary's pregnant, very close to delivery. A lot of women will emphasize with me when I say, that was not a good time to travel. Matter of fact, the only travel you want to do in that kind of situation is to the hospital as quickly as you can get. But it was going to be 3 days that they had to travel, and she would travel on the back of a donkey. And folks, that's not a Ford or a Chevy or a GMC or anything like that. If you've ever ridden on a donkey, you know good and well that's a bumpy ride. Back and forth, up and down. They have a particular cadence. And their little feet move a little differently than a big horse. And so she had to ride on that thing for 3 days, 3 nights. They had to stop, they had to make supper. They were traveling with a caravan. The reason they did that was for protection, because there were bandits out amongst the roadside, and they could easily have been attacked if they were by themselves, so they were smart, joined the caravan, traveled with that for assistance and for help. They had prepared for every event. They had taken food, they had taken water, they had taken all the things that they needed to stop and to camp. They'd even taken their burial clothes. So as you see, wrapped around every traveler in that day was swaddling clothes. It was their burial clothes. So that if something happened on the way, they could be immediately buried. Everything was thought of on that journey. They took the journey, and then when they came to the end, there was nothing there. Second thing we need to notice is the place that was predicted. Over in Micah, the 5th chapter, you will find, in verses 2 through 4, you will find a prophecy that was given. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I didn't mark this Bible out. Micah is one of those small ones that's hard to find real quick. You just kind of have to catch it. There it is. Micah, the 5th chapter. Verses 2 through 4. But you, Bethlehem of Ephrathah, though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth are from old, from everlasting. Therefore he shall give them up until the time that she who is in labor has given birth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return to the children of Israel, and he shall stand and feed his flock in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they shall abide, for now he shall be great to the ends of the earth. Not only was his birth predicted, but his second coming was predicted in that same passage. The birth of Jesus was predicted to be in Bethlehem over 700 years before it took place. See, the Bible is very accurate. And its prophecies and its word is true. And it doesn't change. So the place had already been set aside. Little Bethlehem, about 6 miles outside of Jerusalem. Now this place was a very popular place, especially for those who traveled during the time of any of the events that were held in Jerusalem. At any time, any given time, whenever there's a festival in Jerusalem, Jerusalem would grow from a little town of about 20,000 to a town of 500,000. Now think about this. That would be like Russellville having a conference and over 450,000 people came. Where would we put them? Where would we put them? We hired our homes, we hired our churches, we do everything we could to accommodate that, and still there would be no room. Well, this decree had created a shortage, a room shortage in Bethlehem, in Jerusalem, and all the burgs around Jerusalem. It wasn't that Bethlehem was the only one that was affected, all of them were. Because people were having to come from all different places to register according to the command of Caesar. They went to an inn. By the way, did you know that the inn they went to had a long history? It had a long history. It was known as Chimham's Inn. Chimham. My wife's looking at me kind of curiously. It's mentioned in the Bible. It's mentioned in 2 Samuel 19, verses 38 through 40. It's mentioned in Jeremiah 41:7. It was built by that loyal servant of David, Chimham, after he became a member of David's inner circle. He was one of the mighty men. Jeremiah had spent a night there when he was being abducted and taken to Egypt many years earlier. So this wasn't an unknown inn. No room, the innkeeper said. There just wasn't, but there really was a room. There was his room. The innkeeper wasn't willing to give up his room to a paying customer. Everything else had been filled. You know, it's kind of like us today. We fill up our lives with all kinds of things, but when it comes to putting Jesus there, we don't have any room. We don't want to give up our room to Jesus. And the same thing that happened to the innkeeper who missed his opportunity for eternal life could happen to you. It's a time to remember that our room needs to be filled with Christ. Amen. Our lives need to be filled with Christ. The only thing that was left was a cattle shed. Usually these sheds were basically caves that were beside the inn or the building. People would build these inns close to a cave so they could use it to store the animals in when they came from travelers. It wasn't unusual for them to have one of these close. Think about this. Now, I lived on a farm. I know what a barn looks like. I've had to shell out the barn several times. And I know that all kinds of things come to the barn. We had cows, we had turkeys, we had chickens, we had pigs. And along with that came mice and snakes and everything else. If you've not been in the barn, folks, it's a treat. Just go into one and sit there for a while. Several of you are shaking your heads. Yeah, you know what goes on in there in the barn. It was a barn. And that's where Jesus was born. He was born in a manger, a feed trough. More than likely, it was one that he had to knock some wood loose and build, because Joseph was a carpenter, and he probably had to build a small manger or a small place for Jesus to lay, if there wasn't one already provided that wasn't being used. Jesus' birth was humble. Some would have considered it the lowest of low. I've met some amazing people in my life. I've met some doctors, some lawyers, some theologians who came from very poor beginnings. And I find out that those are the ones that probably have a better attitude about life than anybody else, because they know from where they came. And a lot of that humble living, that humble life, stays with them. And they are very appreciative of what God has given to them and helped them obtain in this life. But it's just sometimes hard to think in our minds, here's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, Godhead, lying in a manger, in a barn, surrounded by cattle, camels, sheep, probably a few chickens in there. And this is where he's born. We forget from whence Jesus came. But it was his humility that brought about salvation for you and I. For over in Philippians, the Bible says that he literally laid aside his deity to become a man, to be born amongst the human race. and die for that same human race. Yet there was no room for him in the end. But then we come to the promise that is fulfilled. That promise comes in verse 7 there. Got to put one more where I was at. Verse 7 there in chapter 2. And she brought forth her firstborn son, wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. Her firstborn. How many of you all are firstborns? Several of us. I'm a firstborn. It wasn't until years later that my mom told me, as I was entering into the ministry, that she had made a promise to God. She had laid me on an altar in a Nazarene church and promised me to God. Now, you wouldn't think about that being really kept by the Lord, but the Lord does keep those promises. He causes things to happen into our lives that brings us into that destiny that God has already prepared us for. Someone said to me, well, you know, how do you know that you were supposed to be a preacher? I said, well, I just felt God's call. He said, yeah, but how did you know it was God's call? I took him to Jeremiah in the 6th chapter, and I said, before I was made in my mother's womb, I belonged to him. Yes. That's what he told Jeremiah. He said, before you were born into your mother's womb, I called you. The calling to preach the gospel is one that is given from the moment of our conception. When we accept it, we're in God's will. The firstborn, if you remember, is important in the Bible. Notice that it was the firstborn that was used to bring the Israelite people out of Egypt. When the firstborn of Egypt died, as God said they would if he didn't let them loose, then it was enough to make the Egyptian Pharaoh say, okay, let them go. But the firstborn of the Hebrew children were protected. They were protected because they were told to mark their doors with the blood of a lamb. They were to mark the 2 side posts and the mantle above. And the thing that happened when you mark the mantle above is the blood drips down upon the stoop or the doorway, the stepway. And if you look back at that, folks, that means a cross. Even then, Christ dying on the cross had been predicted. Yes. That cross, that representation, saved the children of Israel from death angel. Today, the cross still saves. Not the cross itself, but the one who hung on it. It's the symbol of our salvation. It's where we see God's greatest act and gift being given when Jesus dies, and the greatest power released when Jesus resurrected. All of this was promised in that passage. Because you see, he was wrapped in swaddling clothes. Death clothes. Clothes that they would have used for the burial. Already his death was being predicted as he is being born. It's the fulfillment of God's promise that he would send his son to die for our sins. When Luke wrote that passage, he probably didn't realize all that he was saying. But as we are in this Christmas season, we need to remember that God's promise was fulfilled that very day. And it would play itself out over the next 30-some-odd years and would be fulfilled at an empty tomb when Jesus came forth. It's a wonderful time for us. It's quite a journey. They have quite a journey to make, but so do we. Maybe you haven't started your journey yet. Maybe you haven't given your life to Jesus. It's my desire that if you don't know Christ today, we would love to invite you to come and accept Him as Lord and Savior. Because only Jesus can save you. I can't save you. The church can't save you. Membership in the church can't save you. What saves you is a relationship with Jesus Christ on a personal basis. If you've not made that kind of commitment, you need to make it today.